Picture this. It's a sweltering July morning in 1518, and you're weaving through the narrow, cobblestone streets of Strasbourg, a bustling jewel in the Holy Roman Empire. The air hums with the chatter of merchants unfurling their awnings, the laughter of children darting between market stalls laden with fresh bread and spiced meats, and the distant clang of blacksmith hammers shaping iron into tools of trade. Life pulses with the rhythm of prosperity traders haggling over bolts of dyed wool, bakers hawking loaves still warm from the oven, and the faint scent of river mist mingling with the earthy aroma of turned soil from nearby fields. Everything feels ordinary, timeless, until you round a shadowed corner onto a quiet lane, and the world tilts into something out of a fever dream. There, in the middle of the dusty street, a woman moves not with grace, but with a frantic, animal desperation that claws at your soul. Her name is Alara Voss, a simple seamstress in her 30s. Known for her quiet demeanor and skilled needlework that adorned the gowns of the city's minor nobility. But now, her feet pound the stones in a relentless tattoo. Her simple linen dress clinging to her sweat-drenched body like a second skin. Blood seeps through the soles of her worn leather shoes, staining the ground in dark, irregular splotches that mix with the sweat pooling beneath her. Her arms flail in jagged arcs, as if pulled by invisible strings wielded by some cruel, unseen force. Her face is a mask of raw terror, wide eyes darting wildly, pleading with the gathering crowd, lips parted in silent screams that twist into guttural pleas in the low German dialect. Hilf, got Makis Afran, she gasps between labored breaths, her voice a ragged whisper, lost in the growing murmur of onlookers. This isn't dance. It's possession, a body's betrayal so profound it mocks the very idea of human control. Alara had stepped out from her modest timber-framed home that fateful morning of July 4th, perhaps intending to fetch water from the communal well, or visit the apothecary, for herbs to ease a lingering ache from the previous winter's chill. Instead, without warning, her body seized. Witnesses neighbors like old widow Greta, who paused mid-broom sweep, later recounted how Ilara's steps began as a subtle sway, a restless shifting from foot to foot, as if an itch burrowed deep in her bones. But within moments, it escalated into this unholy frenzy, legs kicking high in spasmodic bursts that sent pebbles skittering, hips twisting in defiance of any natural rhythm, her dark hair whipping across her pale cheeks like lashes from an angry god. The sun climbed higher, turning the street into a furnace, and Ilara's movements only grew more frenzied. Sweat cascaded in rivulets down her neck, soaking the collar of her dress until it turned translucent, revealing the frantic rise and fall of her chest. When kind souls approached offering a steadying arm or a cup of cool well water, she recoiled, her body jerking away even as her eyes locked onto theirs in desperate appeal. She tried to sip, but her hands trembled so violently the water spilled in arcs, splashing onto the hot stones where it evaporated almost instantly, leaving behind faint mineral traces like tears on parched earth. As the afternoon wore on, the crowd swelled, apprentices abandoning their masters' shops, housewives peering from upper-story windows with linen-wrapped babies on their hips, even a pair of Dominican friars in their black robes, clutching rosaries that dangled like forgotten talismans. Whispers rippled through them like wind through wheat. Demons, surely, or the wrath of St. Vitus scorned. Some recalled old tales of the choriomania that had flickered through villages decades prior, but none could fathom this visceral horror, a woman, flesh and blood, reduced to a vessel for endless motion. Alara's pleas grew fainter, her voice cracking into hoarse sobs, yet her limbs betrayed her still, stamping and whirling, as if fueled by some infernal engine. By dusk, when the sky bruised purple and lanterns flickered to life along the gabled rooftops, she hadn't paused for a breath. Torches sputtered in iron brackets, casting elongated shadows that danced mockingly around her, turning her form into a grotesque silhouette against the fading light. Neighbors took turns vigil. One draped a woolen shawl over her shoulders as chills racked her frame mid-twist. Another held a crust of bread to her lips, only for it to crumble forgotten in her spasming grip. Prayers rose in a low chant, mingling with the creak of cartwheels from distant alleys and the hoot of an owl nesting in the cathedral spire. Strasbourg slept uneasily that night, but Alara Voss danced on, a lone spectre in the moonlit lane, her exhaustion etched in every futile quiver of her frame. What unfolded next plunged the city into a nightmare, woven from the threads of collective dread, a contagion not of plague-ridden rats or tainted wells, but of the mind's shadowed recesses. Dawn of the second day brought no reprieve. As the first rays gilded the half-timber-bared facades, a baker named Heinrich Brandt, a sturdy man in his 40s with flour-dusted apron and calloused hands from kneading endless dews, felt the stirrings in his own limbs. He'd watched Ilara from his doorway the evening prior, drawn by morbid curiosity, while his wife chided him for neglecting the oven. At first it was a twitch of subtle flex in his calves, an urge to pace that he dismissed as fatigue from the heat. But as he turned back to his loaves, the compulsion bloomed, legs bending into steps, arms sweeping and wide, formal arcs, as if partnering an ethereal lady in a courtly pavane. Heinrich's dance was eerily structured, his boots tracing elegant waltzes on the uneven cobbles, spins that carried him in lazy circles around Elar's wilder gyrations, his face, usually ruddy from the fire's glow, drained to ashen pallor, eyes bulging with the realization that his body moved, to a silent symphony only he could hear, haunting, strains of lutes and viols echoing, from some buried memory of a long-ago harvest festival. The duo's spectacle magnetized the streets. Vendors shuttered stalls prematurely, their cries of fresh eels, ripe cherries, dying into stunned silence. From the towering spire of Strasbourg Cathedral, priests descended in procession, their incense burners swinging like pendulums, filling the air with myrrh's acrid bite in a bid to exorcise whatever infernal rite this was. Rumors swirled thicker than the morning fog rolling off the Rhine, a curse from Jewish quarters across the river, perhaps, or retribution for the recent tithe hikes that had beggared the outer wards. By midday, the lane overflowed with bodies curious, fearful, transfixed us pressing shoulder to shoulder in a human cordon that choked the flow of carts and messengers. Heinrich and Hilara danced apart yet in unwitting harmony, their shadows merging on the walls like lovers in a tragic tableau. The sun beat down mercilessly, turning the crowd's woolens into saunas, beads of sweat tracing paths down furrowed brows as they watched. Unable to tear away, the third day shattered any illusion of isolation. 6 more souls succumbed, a young weaver's apprentice whose limbs jerked in staccato bursts like a puppet with tangled strings, an elderly herbalist who swayed in slow, hypnotic undulations, her gnarled fingers clutching at phantom herbs, twin sisters from the Tanner's Row who mirrored each other's steps in eerie synchrony, their skirts swirling like autumn leaves in a gale. By week's end, the tally climbed past 30, each newcomer imprinting their terror on the growing throng. The afflicted hailed mostly from the labyrinthine alleys of the Krutenau district, Strasbourg's underbelly of thatched hovels and overflowing privies, where famine's shadow lingered from a string of lean harvests and the empire's border skirmishes had driven refugees into overcrowded tenements. A cooper's wife stamped in martial cadence, high-kicking as if drilling for some phantom war. A scribe, usually bent over vellum, in candle-lit scriptoriums, clapped erratic rhythms that echoed like mocking applause. What bound them wasn't uniformity but the universal glaze of horror in their eyes, the dawning awareness of imprisonment within one's own skin, minds screaming halt while flesh rebelled in ceaseless motion. The spread's insidious logic chilled deeper than any winter frost. It favored the prolonged gazers, those who lingered too long at the periphery, their breaths sinking unwittingly with the dancers' labored gasps. Families, in their devotion, fared worse, tending the stricken with broths ladled from steaming pots or bandages for blistered heels, only to feel the itch creep into their own veins hours later. It leaped not through touch or tainted air, but through the eyes, a visual venom that burrowed into the psyche, whispering suggestions of unrest until they bloomed into compulsion. Dr. Elias Worth, a traveling leech from Basel with a satchel of lancets and humoral charts, arrived midweek and scribbled feverishly in his leather-bound journal by lantern light. I have dissected cadavers felled by pestilence, watched gangrene claim limbs in suppurating horror, he noted, his quill scratching like claws on slate. Yet this afflicts not the corpus but the animus, a miasma of the spirit, leaping from gaze to gray matter to sinew, enthralled souls puppeteered by phantoms they cannot name. Strasbourg reels, its veins pulsing with this silent scream. In the face of such enigma, the city's burghers cloaked in velvet doublets and feathered caps, convening in the opulent Rathaus with its frescoed ceilings, depicting imperial triumphs, grappled for answers in smoke-filled chambers. Physicians invoked Galen's humors, positing an excess of choler ignited by the summer's blaze, demanding bloodletting that the dancers' flailing arms rendered futile. Theologians, poring over dog-eared tomes in the cathedral scriptorium, decried Satan's gambit, citing parallels to the biblical fits of the Gadarian swine. Astrologers, peering through brass astrolabes at the comet's baleful streak, Kali's harbinger, though unnamed, blamed celestial misalignment, the star's wrath for earthly sins. Amid this cacophony, a fateful decree emerged. Born of desperation and doctrine, the dancers suffered from insufficient motion. To purge the hot blood corrupting their veins, they must dance more structured, communal, to the tune of salvation. Thus, on the 8th day, the guild square transformed into a stage of folly. Carpenters hammered a vast oak platform under the midday glare, its planks groaning under mallets' blows, while minstrels tuned lutes and shams in discordant prelude. The afflicted were herded gently, some coaxed with whispered endearments, others half carried by Canaan to this wooden altar, where professional troops from Colmar arrived in plumed hats, their silks whispering promises of rhythm reclaimed. Volunteers, buoyed by civic pride or pious zeal, joined the fray, linking arms in hopes of imposing order on chaos. Drums thrummed a steady pulse, viols wailed in minor keys, and the air thickened with the scent of rosin and exertion's houred cloth. At first, a fragile hope flickered, a lyra's thrashing softened momentarily, sinking to the melody's sway. But hubris birthed catastrophe. The music, far from liberating, amplified the curse-like wind fanning embers into inferno. Dancers' steps quickened to frantic tattoo, the platform shuddering under stomps that splintered edges and sent vibrations humming through the crowd's souls. The hired minstrels faltered, their fingers blurring on strings until one by one they too succumbed, bows sawing air in uncontrolled sweeps, breaths hitching to the collective gasp. Word of the cure ricocheted through Strasbourg's veins, drawing throngs at clogged alleys like clotted blood. Bakers forsook ovens, leaving loaves to char. Fishmongers abandoned Rheinhall nets, their catches rotting under the relentless sun. The square devolved into a maelstrom, over 100 souls now. A kaleidoscope of agony, wild flailers colliding midspin, graceful waltzers pirouetting into bystanders, folk stompers clapping till palms blistered raw. The din was infernal, footfalls like thunder on hollow wood, gasps and sobs weaving through melody's wail, the occasional ululation of one pushed beyond endurance. Dust rose in choking clouds, gilded by torchlight as night fell, turning faces to masks of soot-streaked despair. Dr. Worth, wedged at the crowd's edge, his spectacles fogged with humidity, chronicled the unraveling. What was decreed as remedy has become the plague's grand architect, luring the hail into its maw. The stage, meant to confine, broadcasts the affliction, the tune, to soothe, ignites the frenzy. Hell's orchestra plays and Strasbourg sways unwitting in its thrall. The toll exacted was merciless. A grim arithmetic of flesh's limits etched in Strasbourg's ledgers. Ilara Voss, the unwitting harbinger, met her end on the plague's 7th dawn, or was it the 8th? Time blurred in the ceaseless rhythm. She faltered mid-leap, her body a spent arrow loosed too long, crumpling to the platform in a tangle of limbs that twitched defiance even in collapse. The coroner's verdict, cardiac exhaustion, the heart a bellows pumped dry, but accounts from the inner circle paint a spectral final, her final spins devolving into shudders, eyes rolling heavenward in mute accusation, a last ragged exhalation sinking to the drums before silence claimed her. Heinrich Brandt followed 2 days hence, his waltz winding down to stumbles, collapsing amid phantom partners, his chest heaving in futile bids for air as the music swelled oblivious around him. Death stalked in myriad guises, each a testament to motion's tyranny. Hearts burst under unrelenting strain, ventricles fibrillating like overstrung lutes. Strokes felled the unwary, brains awash in diverted blood, while limbs capered on. Some withered from inanition, mouths agape for morsels they couldn't retain porridge, dribbling chinward, mid-chew, ale foaming useless on lips parted in perpetual motion. Sleep evaded them, a luxury bartered for futile repose. Attempts at slumber dissolved into tossing delirium, sheets twisted like shrouds. Dr. Theodoric Lang, a local barber surgeon with ink-stained fingers from anatomical sketches, catalogued the carnage in visceral prose, feet reduced to weeping sores. The cobbles kiss unyielding, joints popped like dry twigs under repetitive assault, flesh atrophied from within, muscles devouring reserves in cannibal fire, and the fever dreamers those whose heat spiked to forge delirium. Visions of spectral revels spurring ever wilder abandon, till the mind fractures and the body follows. By July's waning days, the count neared 50 souls reaped, with thrice that number in their forms a gaunt parade haunting the square. The city's sinews frayed, apothecaries depleted of salves, priests hoarse from endless rites. The Rhine trade stalled as barges lay idle. Their captains fled to Basel's safer harbors. Whispers of abandonment slithered through taverns, families bundling heirlooms into carts under cover of curfew. The exodus, a slow bleed from wards already thinned by want. Strasbourg, once a nexus of empire's commerce, teetered on abyss's brink, its pulse erratic as the dancer's own. Medieval minds, steeped in scripture and stars, spun webs of explanation, as intricate as Arachne's loom, each thread revealing the era's fragile grasp on the unseen. Ecclesiastics, foremost among them, Father Albrecht Voss, no kin to Ella. Though fate's irony twisted, so proclaimed demonic incursion, the dancer's vessels for imps fleeing the harrowing, he brandished crucifixes at the afflicted, their flails undeterred save for fleeting and invoked the Malleus Maleficarum's litany, witches, Sabbaths conjuring this choriac curse to sow discord among the faithful. Trials loomed in fevered debates, pyres imagined in the Rathus's marble halls, though cooler heads prevailed. Fearing the mob's turn inward, healers leaned on corpuscular lore, ergots taint in the rye harvest, that fungal fiend birthing LSD like phantasmagoria visions, the St. Anthony's fire of old, yet the observational leap confounded it. No shared loaf united the stricken, only shared stairs. Melancholia's spectre hovered to that black bile's brew afflicting the downtrodden Strasbourg's famine-scarred poor, battered by crop failures and Habsburg levies, channeling despair into self-lacerating whirl. Astrologers charted doom in the heavens, the comet's fiery tail, a sword of divine judgment slicing summer's vault, perturbing humors below. Comets, after all, heralded Caesar's falls and kingdom's cracks. Why not this mortal coil's unraveling? Modern lenses, tempered by Freud's couch and fMRI's glow, peered deeper into the abyss, unearthing truths as disquieting as any medieval fancy. Mass psychogenic illness reigns as frutreneur societal psyches fracture under duress. Strasbourg 1518, a pressure cooker of penury and plague, where stress is toxins fermented into shared symptom. The poor wards, bastions of bereavement lost kin to typhus, fields barren from unseasonal frosts primed for this cathartic convulsion. Observation the vector for empathy's dark twin, mimetic madness. Echoes abound in annals, Salem's fits, meowing nuns of France. Each a chorus of collective trauma transmuted to flesh. Neurology whispers alternatives. Encephalitis, lethargicus kin. A viral saboteur hijacking basal ganglia, compelling the basal dance. Or conversion disorders, guys. Psyche's slight converting woe to Weirdalera's unspoken griefs. A husband's grave from border raid, perhaps erupting as ambulatory mutiny. Yet the contagions, social alchemy intrigues most. Ideas as pathogens, leaping neural nets like sparks on Tinder, birthing behaviors viral in vain. In our scroll-saturated epoch, parallels proliferate. TikTok's siren challenges, luring youth to ledges. Flash mobs morphing to frenzies. Echo chambers birthing QAnon's march. Strasbourg Square foreshadows feeds frenzy. Stress plus suggestion equals surrender. The many mirroring the mad until madness is majority. The plague's coda arrived. Not in rational remedy but ritual's embrace. A pilgrimage as improbable as the affliction itself. By early August, with pyres flickering on outskirts for the fallen, and the guild's coffers echoing hollow, the burghers pivoted to piety, abandoning the Stagit's planks dismantled in hasty bonfire. Embers swirling like liberated spirits, they decreed a holy trek to the chapel of St. Vitus that saint of spasms and spectacles, patron against the dance divine that bore his name. Logistics bordered on lunacy, 400 afflicted, a human tide of twitch and twirl, marshaled into wagons reinforced with iron braces. Kin and guards clasping wrists to curb cascades. The exodus dawned August 3rd, a serpentine column snaking from Strasbourg's gates, carts creaking under weight of the unwilling, horses snorting mist in the chill Perdone, the air alive with muffled moans and murmured matins. Miles unfurled in tableau vivant, dancers restrained yet restless, their steps sinking to wagon's sway. Onlookers lining the road, rosaries clicking like priests intoning litanies that drowned the Rhine's murmur. Starrenberg's shrine, a modest stone edifice nestled in vine-cloaked hills, awaited like a verdant confessional. Eyewitness affidavits, sworn before notaries with waxen seals, recount the uncanny denouement, as each pilgrim was paraded before the altar Vitus's reliquary aglow with tapers. Kiss their frenzy ebbed, no bolt from azure, rather, a gradual diminuendo flails fading to flutters, spins two shuffles, till stillness settled like dew on exhausted petals. Dr. Worth, trailing the train with satchel slung, marveled in script, faith's forge, or mind's mercy. The flesh yields to the sacred, compulsions crumbling under blessing's weight. In ours, the grip loosens. By vespers, the dance dissolves. Come August 4th's eve, but a handful stirred. Morn brought quiet, the afflicted rising stiff-limbed but sovereign. The plague punctured like a spent blister.